Thanks, guys. That was awesome. I love that song. How fitting. Whew. I'm all sweating. I'm not even up here yet. So my dad was going to be out of town. It got canceled, but so he's kind of having a staycation this week. And I just had the opportunity to, I don't know, every once in a while I just feel like it's time for me to share my testimony again. I always say for an introvert, this is great because I get to tell everyone at once. I don't have to do it over and over again. I can tell everyone all at one time. So, and I only have one story. And in the light of the growth groups, I was thinking about this. You know, a lot of people that have been to growth groups with me in the past, they know me pretty well. They know that I talk about weed at every single Bible study. It was an ongoing joke. So I can't help it. It just kept happening. Then I had to like make sure it kept going. But yeah, we only all have one story. We have one story, and I call it, you know, my God story. But to me, it's a story of a miracle. The more I look at it, and today we've been going through Mission Possible of the church, and I was thinking about like, what am I going to do? It's the testimony. Last week was the Sanctity of Human Life Sunday was last week, and I was just thinking, man, what does this mean? I want to do my testimony, but how does that fit in with Mission Possible? And I just realized that I was a possible mission, right? My life was a mission that was possible for somebody. You know, they thought it was possible that they could tell me about Jesus, tell me about his love, and they could change me. And people have poured into me. And so, what is it, 11:30? I typically have a 3-hour testimony, but this today I'll try to do it in an hour and a half, okay? So if you guys don't have coffee, you might want to get some. I guess in all seriousness, before I start sharing my testimony, I would have to ask for some grace. And we all need grace. I need grace because I'm going to share some stuff about myself that is not good. You know, it's not good stuff. So I always ask for grace, and I'm thankful for grace, and has helped mold me into who I am. As long as I don't let it destroy me. I'll start rambling. Okay, this is how it starts, okay? I was born in 1978, so this year I'm turning 40, so that means I'm getting older. I was born with the name Aaron James Hill. Aaron James Hill, and I was born as the illegitimate son of a 16-year-old woman. And I look back at that, and I'm like, okay, just with Roe versus Wade 5 years before I was born, I feel blessed even to be alive because my mother at that time had a choice, and her choice was going to be to have an abortion because it was legal, right? Fortunately, from what I know of the story, my grandfather would not allow it. He's like, no, you know, we don't do that. This isn't in my notes, and that's when you get in trouble is when you say that and then you say something else. But I was watching a thing, I saw it on the internet this morning. It was talking about in New York City saying that the African American population, that now in New York City there's more people getting abortions, more African Americans are being aborted than born. And I was like, man, how did we get to this point? How did we get to this point in this world that we didn't value life? Is it because we could buy meat at the shopping market and it doesn't cost us anything? I don't know. I've been thinking about these things. Some of you are like probably thinking, I'm a little confused. Isn't this the pastor's son? Yes. And if you stay with me, I'll explain how all that played out. God pulled me out of a pit about 19 years ago. I was in a pit. I was somewhere that I thought I was going to be for the rest of my life, but God pulled me out and has been making me new for 19 years. And just saying 19 years is like blowing me away. Really? Where has all the time gone? Where's all the time gone? I say 19-ish years because I don't remember the exact day that I got saved or the first day I confessed Jesus as Lord because I had been drinking that night. So I was a little bit tipsy. I know about the time, but I had been drinking that night. I got a photo of me about that time. That's me in Oregon. So when I told people I used to have long hair, it was a hippie there. Pretty hair, yeah. Protein, Pantene Pro V. And that's camping hair. I was like sleeping in a tent. So this guy was, my life was about partying back then. And so what happened is about this time in my life, I had a friend, her name was Monica, she was pretty crazy. She partied with us, and even I thought she was a little bit over the edge in her drinking and just the way that she was living her life. She was a few years younger than me, but she went on a trip to like pick up a car or something, and she ended up getting into a car accident. That was pretty bad. And she came back from that, and I don't know what happened. She told me she was watching TV and saw some kind of vision, and like, I don't know the whole story, but what happened is I saw a change in her. She started talking about Jesus constantly, right? And it was like so annoying. I remember like we were like partying and everyone's like, oh, here comes Monica talking about Jesus again, trying to ruin the party. I'm like, I just want to party and have fun. She kept showing up and talking about Jesus, and that's how it started. She was talking about Jesus, and it was my first like real look into Jesus. Like, oh, okay, Jesus. Okay, this is weird. It made me feel, all that made me feel like was, I was thinking about death. It scared me, and it's like I don't want to think about death, but at the same time, I felt like I should, and there was something compelling about it. And so I ended up giving my life to the Lord when I had been drinking. I had a friend that she went to a Bible study with Monica, and she came back, she said, salvation is so simple. I can't believe how simple it is. She's like, do you want to give your life to Jesus right now? And I said, no. No, why would I do that? That's crazy. And for some reason, there was another prompting of some kind, and a couple minutes later, she asked me again. She's like, do you want to give your life to Jesus? And I said, yeah, I do. I didn't even know what that meant. I just know that I needed help. I just know that I didn't like who I was. And I know that I needed help. And if there was a God out there and he was real, I was hoping for that because I was lost. And so I look back at that, and man, I didn't grow very well. But I remember the first time I believe God spoke to me. And it was about a little after that. I was sitting at my friend's house, and we went outside to our smoking section, right? We smoked outside, and all my friends were saying Jesus Christ. I was like, I didn't realize they were so religious. No, they weren't saying Jesus Christ, because they liked Jesus Christ. It was a cuss word. And there's something in me was like, if there's a battle, my theology, if there's a battle between good and evil, right? Wouldn't you think evil would want to talk bad about Jesus? Why does everyone say Jesus Christ? And I was like, people do it in different languages. They still use Jesus' name as a cuss word. And so I look back at that, and I was like, that's when God was first starting to talk to me, because he started getting me to think about what was happening, and what the truth really is, and why we were so mindless in just saying Jesus Christ as cuss words all the time, but never thought of Jesus, the Son of God. We celebrated Christmas, we did all these things, but I never even considered Jesus being the actual real Son of God. Just a cuss word? I don't know. Let's pray before we start, okay? Lord, we come to you thankful for life, thankful for the sanctity of life. Lord, I thank you that you pursued us in a way that just seems so reckless to us. You pursued us in a way that doesn't make sense to us because we're your enemies if we look at it. We fight you at every turn, Lord. But you continue to bless us. And we come to you today thankful for that, Lord. Speak to our hearts. I pray that in Jesus' name. So I was raised by a teenage mother and my stepfather. My mom got married like when she was 18, so when I was a couple years old. And I grew up in a home where I believed that I was loved. I believed I was loved. And I believed that my parents were trying to be the best they could be, but they were partiers. Just imagine yourself at 18 years old. I look back, oh yeah, my 18-year-old parents. But what happened in their life is I noticed that sin is only pleasant for a season. You know, and if anyone's ever gone through addictions and stuff, it starts out slow often. Next thing you know, you're trapped in something and you don't know how you got there. And I believe that's what happened to my parents. They got stuck in ruts of addiction, you know, drugs and alcohol. And because of that, my family life wasn't very good. It wasn't optimal. It was full of domestic violence. There was a lot of abuse going on. Not necessarily to us kids when it comes to like physical violence, but between my mom and my stepdad. Lots of yelling and just, you know, wishing I never had kids, screaming at us. I don't know. It was one of those things like the police were at our house all the time. And I remember specifically having to call the cops all the time. It was just crazy. You know, it always start with a couple drinks in a good mood, and it always turn into a fist fight and someone getting beat up and the cops being called, and it just spiraled. And I don't know if any of you that had similar experiences, but for me, like I remember saying, I'm never gonna be like this. You know, when I grow up, I'm not gonna be like them. I'm not gonna, they call it iniquity. I'm not gonna follow that iniquity and be like them. But by the time I was 12 years old, I was already addicted to cigarettes and was dabbling with marijuana and drinking. You know, it was in the house, I could just find it, so that's what I was doing. And this is one of the things I'm not very proud of. A lot of these things, but about that time, I was about 12 years old. I met this guy down the street, and who had just got out of prison, and his name was George, and that's his real name. I don't care if he finds me now. And so what this George guy did, he was across the street from a friend. We'd go over his house and hang out with him and his wife. He had some like young kids, but he was like, hey, you want to go out and like make some money? I'm like, sure. So we'd hop in his car and he'd take me out and like had me go into people's garages and start like stealing chainsaws and things like that. So this guy like just took me under his wing to teach me how to steal. And where were my parents? Yeah, exactly. He taught me how to steal, and he would give me money and he'd buy us beer and, you know, and cigarettes and all those things. I was 12, 13 years old. So I was already stuck in that. And he used to do that until I got busted. And I remember him telling me that if I ever told on him, that he would kill me. That's why I said now. His name was George. I don't know if you could ever find him. He might not even be alive, but I'm not afraid of him anymore. I was back then. And I look back at that time in my life, and it's like, I needed a mentor. I really did. I needed a mentor, and I got one. I got one, but it wasn't the one I needed. He taught me a lot of things I should not have learned. And so at the age of 12, I was arrested for second-degree burglary. Yeah, I climbed into my neighbor's house, and they busted me for it. You know, the cops came to the school, and they were like, hey, we saw you climbing in the window. And I was like, yeah, I was just trying to get my paper airplane off the roof. And I thought that was the lamest excuse ever. Not to say that excuses are good, but you know, kids aren't very smart, and I wasn't very smart. Like, that, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, my paper airplane. I spent a weekend in juvenile and did a bunch of community service at a zoo. And I remember it was just horrible. And I remember promising everyone that I would never, ever, ever do anything like this again. That's, you know, I'm not going to do that again. Kind of like, I'm not going to be like my parents and drinking and stuff. But without much foundation in my life, that was very short-lived. And so I would say wanting to be accepted, tried to have friends and stuff and be cool, controlled my life. And it led me to dropping out of school at 15, just because it was boring, you know, and I just wanted to party. And so my mother and my stepfather ended up divorcing, and so I was able to do anything I wanted. I didn't even have to come home if I didn't want to. I could just run around, and my house was kind of was toxic anyway, so I didn't want to be there, and it was much funner hanging out with my friends until I couldn't really stay there. So I kind of ended up on the streets there for part of my life there. And so fortunately I had a lot of friends, so I could stay at their houses, but when that wasn't happening, like I had nowhere to go. And so I would stay in people's boats or RVs or pretty much any warm place you could find. There was like apartments that would have like the pool room and stuff where you do laundry, and I'd just sneak in there and find a place to sleep. And so that put me in some pretty dangerous situations, you know, getting woke up by people saying, why are you in my RV? Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't get shot. And I guess to supply my growing addictions with drugs and alcohol, I stole anything I could get my hands on. That's what I felt like I was taught. I stole bikes. I started with bikes. I went on to stealing cars. I went into burglarizing homes. And I took stuff from anyone without any remorse. I just felt like the world owed me and it didn't matter. If I could get away with it, then so be it. And I also became a violent person. So I got into drugs and alcohol like my parents did. I got into violence like what I grew up, all the things that I saw started to happen. And so I got myself involved in an abusive relationship when I was probably around 17. It was codependent and it was abusive. And I was an abusive person. And I look back at it and I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it. That's why I'm adamantly against these things these days and fight so hard against them. But what people would think is like after I got saved that my life would do a 180 immediately, but that is not the case. I guess a hard nut to crack or something. I got saved, and what happened is a lot of the worst things I ever did in my life happened after I got saved. I gave my life to the Lord, but man, I didn't know what to do. I wanted to be a good Christian, but I didn't even know what that was. I prayed a prayer. I believe, looking back, I was swayed back and forth if I was saved or not. But looking back, I'm like, yeah, God was working on me. He was talking to me, and but I didn't know what to do. I had no idea. The Christians that I knew were just all hypocrites. They were at the parties with me, for the most part. But then they would tell me about Jesus. But I didn't have anyone mentoring me. I had no one discipling me. There was no one that I could go to. And we didn't have the Google, you know? I had a Bible that I would read when I got in trouble or something didn't go right. But what happened is, you know, I was so enslaved to sin and like where I was in my life that I felt like I even went crazier. So I ended up trying to get myself admitted to the hospital for mental problems. Really, I couldn't get over it, you know? I was just under attack constantly, and I thought I was going insane. And I think I did. I think I did. I never got any medication. They never helped me. But what I realized when I looked back is I was in the middle of a big spiritual war, and I didn't have any of the weapons to battle it. I didn't have any of the weapons. And I was totally lost and unequipped. So what I did is, after that, is I found a way to kind of chill out a little bit and just be a little bit more comfortably numb. I stopped doing hard drugs a lot, but I would drink and, you know, smoke pot all the time, essentially, just to kind of stay chill, you know, not get in trouble. And this is one of those things, I wonder if you guys have ever done it, but I remember that time of my life thinking, I'll just go, try to be okay, but do whatever I want. But, you know, if I was ever about to die, I would just say, hey, Jesus, save my life. Hey, Jesus, save my life, because I wasn't sure if I was going to go to heaven or not. But if I said, Jesus, save my life right before I died, then I would go there, so it would be good. But here's the problem. I almost did die. I was partying at 9 o'clock in the morning with some guy, you know, up in the woods, up by Canada and Washington State. And we got in this car accident, and I almost died. We hit a tree, went down this ravine, and ended up in a creek. And I was underwater, and I remember thinking, this is going to be my last breath. this is going to be my last breath. And it happened so quick. I was fortunate that I was able to flip around and get out the window that I shattered with my shoulder, and I crawled out. First thing I thought is like, man, I better hide my paraphernalia. I'm going to go to jail. Then I'm like, oh, my arm doesn't work. It was like doing this. This one worked, but this one just flew out because I broke my shoulder in a few places. Wow. I didn't even have the time to think about Jesus. Not 1 second. It just happened so quick. And I remember literally laying in a stretcher thinking, Aaron, this should be one of those times that will make you give your life to Jesus for real. Aaron, this is one of those times, one of those incidents that should make you change your life, to kind of like snap you out of where you're at and to put you on the right path. But it didn't. And I literally was thinking, this is one of those times. I was waiting for a miracle, but I wasn't willing to do anything. I didn't even know how to take that step. It didn't. Fortunately, around that time, I did attend church here and there. And I went to this, I call it a mildly Costal Bible study because it was kind of Pentecostal, but not like crazy Pentecostal. Mildly Costal. Not wildly, but mildly. This is where this chair comes down here. So I was sitting. I went to this church and I had long hair like that, and they were like, "Hey, do you need prayer?" I was like, "Sure." They were like, "Come down. There's this little chair." You know, it was like really uncomfortable. I'm probably bring some. And interesting enough, the lady that ran the Bible study was like 90 and had a Bible that big. So for many years, I thought you had to have a really big Bible. But they sat me down and they said, "Hey, Aaron, how can we pray for you?" And I remember sitting there thinking, okay, this is weird, but what do I want prayer for? And I remember thinking, it just came out. I said, "Hey, I would like you guys to pray for me that I would meet my real father." Because up to that point, I had no knowledge of him other than a picture in a yearbook where his name was James Saliski. That's all I knew about my dad. It was like a junior picture or whatever. James Saliski. So they sat there and they prayed for me. And I remember just sitting there weeping. And so my girlfriend at the time took it as her mission that she was going to try to find my dad for me. And so she got on the internet, which came out about then. I mean, it was the military had it, but it wasn't in many homes. So she got on the internet and talked to my mom and found my dad's mom's last name in Oklahoma, and I started making phone calls, just saying, "Hey, I'm looking for my father, Jim Saliski," that's not my dad's real name. He was using a stepfather's name at the time, And I remember getting a phone call from a guy saying, "Hey, am I your dad?" He's like, and then I guess he wanted to talk to my mom, first, and he said, "Did we have a child?" She said, "Yes." So he's like, "Hey, will you send me some pictures?" They're like, it's because some random person calls you, because he didn't know he had a son. And, "Hey, send me some pictures." So we used a scanner and scanned some pictures and sent them over the interweb. It was pretty funny. And he got the pictures and he's like, "Do you want to come to Ohio and visit?" He didn't ask for a DNA test. He's like, because we looked alike. And so I was like, yeah, I'll come to Ohio. So I flew out here in the year 2000, and it was, the date exactly was July 27th, the year 2000. I'm going to read this, and I'm going to show you guys a picture that's going to come up here. And this, if you get my dad's daily devotionals, yeah, he was doing them back then too. This is what he wrote. For those of you who have been getting my devotionals for a few years, you'll no doubt know that my family situation was less than perfect when I was growing up. My mother was married many times, having divorced my father when I was 2. When I was 15, she was between husband number 3 and 4. It was a bad time to be without a male role model, and I got myself in quite a bit of trouble. To say we weren't Christians was an understatement. I can never remember being in a church with any member of my family. As things got worse, she threw me out of the house. I immediately boarded a bus for anywhere, and my mother soon moved away as well. We had lived in Spokane, Washington at the time. We'd only lived there about a year, and I've never been there since. What's worse, while I was living in Spokane, I had been using my stepfather's last name, so no one there even knew my real name. With all this said, you can imagine my total shock when I received a phone call from Spokane about a week ago. It was from a young man who was looking for his father, a father who would have been 15 in 1976. It seems his mother had tried to find me for quite some time. She was also 15, but finally decided to raise him on her own. His mother was a young woman who lived about a block from me. I knew her pretty well. Well, obviously. Sorry. I forgot you guys were there. Yeah. Today, I drove to the airport and picked up a 22-year-old young man, a son I never knew I had. There's the picture. He looks exactly like me, right down to the lanky frame and the dimples. Oh, and did I mention he's a born-again Christian who's prayed for me for years? That was kind. He wrote, so what does this mean? He says, for starters, it means that God is sovereign, and that is timing for me and Aaron James Hill to get to know each other. It's his timing. It also means that although I've been long redeemed by the blood of Christ, there are still a lot of lives out there I had touched negatively before I knew the Lord. Lastly, I guess it means that I'm more grateful than I have been in a long time. I just keep repeating over and over, he's alive, he's alive. I never prayed for him, wiped a single tear, or spent a minute worrying about him, but he's alive. Our God truly is an awesome God. While I was running all over the earth and acting like a spoiled jerk, he was watching over my oldest son, dreaming of the day he would lead us to a long-awaited embrace in the middle of a crowded airport. And there's a verse here. It says, you hear, O Lord, the desire of the afflicted. You encourage them, and you listen to their cry, defending the fatherless and the oppressed in order that man who is of the earth may terrify no more. That was quite the experience for me, to say the least, meeting my dad when I was 22 years old. I came back again that year, and he gave me this Bible. I had it rebound, but I still have it. It says, Aaron James Hill, by Dad, Christmas 2000, our first. What a miracle, right? What a miracle. You see, what happened is, after I met my dad, he started mentoring me that day. I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it until much later, but he started mentoring me. And he would call me all the time and say, hey, how's it going? How you doing? And then he's like, hey, you should move out here. And I was like, yeah, I probably should, but, I was still up to no good. I was trying to be a good person. I was trying to be a good Christian. I just didn't know how. He'd drop hints, and I'm like, well, if I go to Ohio, that means I'm going to have to give up everything. Just seemed like so heavy. It seemed so heavy to me. And I knew God was calling me, and I knew I could have a powerful testimony. I knew I could. But it just felt too hard to do. It was too hard for me to do it. And I would think, wouldn't a miracle like that spur me on to give my life to Christ and walk with him? Wouldn't a miracle like that do it? Kind of. Kind of. I still wanted it my way, though. It's like, I still wanted my way, and I got it that way. I got it my way, and that's what happened. I got in fights with my dad over the phone because I got myself thrown in jail a couple times and was asking him to bail me out, and he helped me buy a car. I saved it. We got $500, and then I drove it and got a DUI and got it taken away right after that. But I got it my way. I got more jail time. I got a longer criminal record. I got a couple felonies. I got a DUI, and there wasn't a drug I didn't try, and there was another failed relationship in that time. My life was just crap. I was trying, but I didn't know what to do. And my dad would call me, but I wouldn't want to do that because I knew what I'd have to give up. And I knew what I should do, but I couldn't do it. We all get stuck there. You might be stuck there today. I get stuck there all the time. But what happened, I don't know. Essentially, I started drinking. I started drinking a lot and got more of a professional after you become 21 and start hitting the bars. I got pretty good at it, but eventually it caught up with me, and I started blacking out. You pee yourself. You pass out and pee yourself. Like, yeah, that's great. This is what I want to do with my life. But after I went out partying this one night, and it just wasn't a good night. I got into this fist fight with this guy. It was horrible. But something snapped in me. I don't even know how to explain it. The best way I could explain it is like, has anyone ever seen that picture that says footprints? And it's talking about there's only one set of footprints. It's like, God, where are you? Essentially, it's like, well, those were my footprints. I was carrying it. It was like something snapped in me, and like God said, that's it. We're done with this. And I feel like he picked me up. And it wasn't like, but I was tired of my life living like that. I was like, I'm done. I'm tired of it this way. I'm tired of having it my way. What do I have to do? And I remember I got up that next day. I got on the phone, called my job, and I was totally hungover, so they wouldn't have been any good anyway. I quit my job, and I called my dad. I said, can I move out here? He said, yeah, let's figure it out. And I had a whole month in between that time that I made that phone call that I could have ran the other way, but I didn't. I felt like the whole time God was like holding me. I was like, I am done with this. I'm going somewhere. I don't even care what happens. I'm done. And to me, it just felt like a miracle. So I did. It took me 3 years from the time that I met my father to move out here. 3 whole years of him prompting me. And then I was like, just imagine the risk that my dad and his wife Jill took bringing me out here. I was just a punk kid. They came and they moved me into their basement. And I'm like, man, I don't even know if I would let me live with me at that point. There's people that live at our house now, but I always say I was the first Harvest House graduate. I was. They took a risk on me. It could have went horribly. But I tried to make them proud, and I tried to make sure that they didn't regret moving me out here. Band, if you guys ready to come up? I look back and I think about that time of my life, and I wonder what I would say to my 20-year-old self right now. I think it would go something like this. I'd say, Aaron, or Aaron, at 39 years old, you have been married to the love of your life for 11 years and 1 day. Right? Not only that, but you actually love each other and treat each other with respect, which is also pretty rare these days, it seems like. You will date that girl for over 2 years, and your first kiss will be on the day you proposed. That's a whole nother sermon in itself. Working in youth ministry and trying to be good examples to the kids. Aaron, you will have 6 children on earth and 2 in heaven. And 1 on the way in August. They'll be making their, it's 1. It's 1 this time. We had twins, so no, it's just 1 this time. I got a picture of us. This is like the only picture of us all together. We were at Hocking Hills. We went for a day hike, and that's all the kiddos. Aaron, you'll have your name changed to Aaron James Kilby. I ended up changing my name after I got here. And the Lord will have performed a miracle, and he will have given you back the years that the thief stole from you, the years of drug addiction. He gave them back to me, and I'm thankful to it. I still have scars, like my dad said. The past still haunts me a little bit, but God is faithful. Aaron, your days of addiction are over, and you will have almost 15 years of ministry work under your belt, which I really don't understand that statement. I don't understand under your belt. But I think my 20-something self would say to me that there is no way that any of this could be true unless God did exist and he still performed miracles, right? And I feel what happened is that I started to realize that God loved me. He loved me. I didn't want him to love me. I didn't want to let him love me because I know that I'd have to respond. But he kept loving me, even when I didn't deserve it. That's why I like that reckless love song. It's not that God is reckless and doesn't put thought in things. He thought of me before, and all of you before you were even had a breath, right? From our perspective, it's so reckless, but his perspective, it's just him being loving. I realized he started to love me and that he actually treasured me. He treasures you too. You're a treasure to him. He pursued me when I was running away. And he pursued me so much that he gave up his most valuable possession, his son, to pursue me and to come after me. Matthew 13:44 says this: "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered, hidden in a field. In his excitement, he hid it again and sold everything he owned to get enough money to buy that field." Right? I look at this verse and it's like, oh yeah, a guy bought a field. No. What happened is God found you in a field. He found a treasure called you. And so he gave up everything he had to buy that field so he can have you. That's an amazing thing. You are the treasure that God has found. And so I know that he has worked miracles in my life and he is still performing them despite myself. He helps me get out of my own way. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to share that today. My stuttering and all. But God is faithful. And so, you know, just like I had this chair and someone said, hey, can we pray for you? I set up other chairs. And so while the band plays, if you need prayer, there's a seat for you. And someone will come and lay a hand on you and will pray with you. And God still does miracles.